Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Armand, and I'm the Deputy Director of Community Engagement at the T. I'll be the moderator for tonight's meeting, and we really appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you so much for your participation. As a reminder, all of our participants here are muted upon entry at this time until the Q&A. And as mentioned earlier, the meeting will be recorded and is currently being recorded so that it can be shared with people that were unable to join. Tonight's meeting is to share information on the MBTA's summer 2023 service changes. Before we get started, I'd like to review a few meeting controls for folks that are unfamiliar with Zoom. Next slide, please. If you need any technical assistance with Zoom, please chat with tech support. You'll find tech support listed on our Zoom chat. If you have any question about the presentation, please send those questions to Ask Questions here, and we'll be able to answer your question at the end of the presentation. You can also raise your hand and I can unmute. We offer interpretation during this meeting. Our interpretation for tonight's meeting will be in Spanish, Haitian Creole, and Mandarin. If you require these services, please click the interpretation button on your screen. That's a small globe icon, and select your preferred language. I'd now like to invite our interpreters to share this message with you all. I'll start with Alicia.
Good evening. Buenas noches, soy Alicia y seré su intérprete para el español esta noche. Ofrecemos interpretación en español durante esta reunión. Para escoger el audio en inglés o en español, puede seleccionar el botón de interpretación y ese botón aparece como la imagen de un globo o un planeta en su pantalla. Y después de seleccionar la interpretación, entonces puede escoger el idioma que le gustaría escuchar.
Thank you, Alicia. David?
Bonsoir tout le monde, mon nom c'est David, c'est moi qui va servir comme interprète pour créole haïtien pendant la réunion. Donc, d'ailleurs, nous connaissons nos besoins service interprétation pour créole haïtien. Nous pouvons cliquer sur le bouton interprétation qui est affiché comme si c'était un petit globe. Et là, cliquez sur le bouton ça pour avoir le choix pour comme si sélectionner l'angle que vous voulez assister à la réunion. Merci.
Thank you, David. Haran?
Hello, everyone. My name is Haran. I'm your interpreter for tonight's meeting. 我叫浩然，今天晚上我是你们的国语翻译今天晚上的这个 meeting 呢，这个会议呢会有英文、西班牙语、海地语，还有这个中文如果你要听翻译的话，请打开你这个屏幕底下的一个小地球仪写着这个翻译英文是 interpretation， 打开这个小地球仪之后呢点过去 Mandarin 国语Chinese 或者是中文这个地方，你就可以听到我的翻译。谢谢 ，Thank you。
Thank you all. Next slide, please. I'd also like to introduce our ASL interpretation for tonight's meeting. Our interpreters are Linda Gregorio and Carrie McSwain. If you'd like ASL interpretation, keep your view settings in gallery mode. Our interpreters are pinned, but if you don't see that option, to pin the interpreter's video, click the ellipses in the top right corner of the interpreter's video and select Pin Video. Closed captioning is also available. Please click the CC button at the bottom of your screen, and the captions are to be moved to align with your needs. Further, we'd like to emphasize that, next slide, all MBTA activities, including public meetings, are free of discrimination. The MBTA complies with all federal and state civil rights requirements preventing discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, limited English proficiency, and additional protected characteristics. We welcome the diversity from across our entire service area. If you have any questions or concerns, please visit www.mbta.com to reach the Office of Diversity and Civil Rights. Transitioning into the agenda, we're going to talk about the summer service changes. We're going to talk about why and how service is changing. Then we're going to talk about the bus operator shortage, how this is being addressed, trip planning and alternate route tools, additional service changes, and Sumner Tunnel closure. I'd now like to pass this over to Melissa DeLay, our Senior Director of Service Planning at the MBTA, for us to begin. And Melissa will be co-presenting with Gil Alzate, our Director of Staffing. Melissa?
Thank you, Ashley. I'm here to speak about our upcoming summer 2023 service changes. Starting July 2nd, MBTA will be revising bus service schedules to better reflect service that will operate and improve service delivery by decreasing long gaps and trip cancellation. We also have a number of other changes for our other modes, including subway, commuter rail, ferry, and the ride. And in total, we have about 92 routes that would be affected by the upcoming summer schedule changes. We also have some Sumner Tunnel related transit changes that I'll also be discussing. Next slide, please. So for the bus network, why are we changing service? In general, the MBTA bus service schedules do not always reflect the bus arrival times due to operator shortages and not having enough drivers to run the routes daily. 1 in every 25 to 30 bus trips across the network is dropped, resulting in uneven and unreliable service. That can be quite pronounced on our most frequent routes. For example, Route 1 should be every 8 to 12 minutes, but often our riders can find their experience is that they arrive and there's an actual gap of maybe 16 to 25 minutes between trips, and that can be a very frustrating experience that happens all too often. So how are we changing service? This is fundamentally a truth in advertising change. Now, as I go through these, it's important to keep straight the scheduled service, what we say we're going to operate, and the actual service, what actually shows up to the curb when you want to ride a bus. The scheduled service is slated to be reduced by 4 to 5%, but already we're not providing the scheduled service so that the actual service delivered is below scheduled levels. And further, because trips are dropped in an unplanned or unscheduled way, they're more disruptive than the changes we are advancing for the summer. Our busiest routes, the key bus routes, those are every, for the most part, 15 minutes or better on our top 15 bus routes by ridership. They experience higher drop trips than other bus routes. And with the schedule changes that we're advancing for the summer, they're expected to have 2% more actual trips operate than they do today because of the reduction in drop trips that we expect. Most routes will have more actual trips, though some will see a modest reduction. Overall, the new summer service changes are expected to improve service reliability. So how are these service changes determined? We looked at whether routes had available capacity. We're very regularly monitoring ridership using the automated passenger counters and other data sources. And those are based on detectors at the front and rear doors of a bus that measure people, whether they're interacting with a fare box or not. We have our free fare routes and we are still able to monitor ridership on those routes, even though there are some places where we don't have fare collection as part of our free fare program there. We did not recommend reduced scheduled service on routes if it was projected to increase crowding above our thresholds as defined by the service delivery policy. Next slide. This shows kind of the root cause between the mismatch between the schedules that we say we're going to operate. Fundamentally, bus operator availability is a challenge currently experienced by transit agencies across the country. Since 2020, the MBTA is down approximately 200 bus operators versus pre-COVID operator availability. You can see we've hired more than 200 operators in the last 12 months, but at the same time, we've also had increased attrition, and that means that the overall population has declined, and that means that we're not able to deliver the schedules that we are currently scheduled for. With that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Gil Alzate.
All right, perfect. Good evening, everyone. Again, Gil Alzate, the Director of Staffing. Thank you for having me. In terms of how do we address our operator shortage, tons of work underway in order to one, increase throughput, and two, address the job attractiveness of the role. We understand it's a challenging role. Within HR and our recruitment team over the past year, we've more than doubled the recruitment team that's focused specifically on hiring operators. We've done partnerships with the RMV to get direct access to folks' driving records, everything to be able to streamline our internal process and overall throughput. In terms of a job attractiveness, we started off with putting a sign-on bonus for this role. We started off with $4,500 and recently increased that signing bonus up to $7,500 sign-on bonus for the operators. We also provide a couple things on the CDL. We started off with a CDL familiarization course led by our training school instructors. We invite all applicants to come in one Tuesday in the evening to come and familiarize themselves with the CDL permit process. From that process, we went and learned of the challenge that it was for folks to be able to get their permit. And then we went ahead and implemented and extended our new hire training to include the CDL permit. So now we're taking on folks, hiring them onto the MBTA and providing the training for the permit, bringing them down to the RMV and allowing them to pass their permit testing. Once applicants new team members are able to get their permit, they move on to the rest of our bus operator training program. That was a huge win for us. And we hear from our candidates that it's a good value add. Most recently, the change, we're excited to say that we went ahead and now we're hiring bus operators on a full-time basis. Historically, the MBTA has hired new operators on a part-time basis. Now we're offering full-time roles to be, again, we've heard from our operators the challenge, that was a key one, and now we're offering that. Overall, it's just we have a robust hiring plan for FY23, and now as we look at FY24, increasing our recruitment marketing efforts. And more importantly, when we're thinking about marketing, getting in front of the communities that we know we need to get in front of, where we get tons of applicants, and getting on the road. One of the things that was important for us was to get out of our seats, get in front of the communities, and share what we have available. In April, we launched HR on the Go. We retrofitted an MBTA bus. You have some pictures here that show, and we went to 4 locations: Mattapan, Quincy, Lynn, and Revere, and we got to engage with the public, just selling the opportunities that we have. So everything from looking at internal processes, again, and also focusing on the job attractiveness to be able to showcase what a great career opportunity our bus operator is.
Thanks for sharing that context. I think it's really important to see that these schedule changes aren't the only change that we're doing to try to address the operator shortage, but it's in the context of quite many things that we're working on. So with that, let me go into a bit more detail on the bus service changes that are taking effect in July. All of these are available on our website at the link you can see on our screen, mbta.com/service-changes/summer-2023-service-changes. I won't be speaking to every single route, but these are available on our website. So dividing them into buckets of changes, many of them are related to the operator shortage. And then as we do every rating, there are a number of changes that are ongoing because of unique characteristics of each route in our system. So first of all, let me start with the routing changes. We have 12 routes with route changes. For example, each one of these is different. In the case of the Route 16, we have a handful of more trips that will be traveling into the not Bay State Shopping Center, the shopping center right off of Mass Ave, South Bay Shopping Center, where there's a health center that's opened up. And already there are folks going to the retail establishments that have long been in that area, but this will get us more early morning ridership opportunities to get to those more all-day destinations and not only after 10 o'clock in the morning. In the case of the 28th, that's a individual route that's changing because school is reopening, and we sometimes have routes that do something slightly different around school release time. 29, that's a handful of evening trips on Saturday nights and on weekday nights that will be doing something more consistent with the service pattern that operates throughout the day. Route 85, we have some construction related changes. Route 90 has a change related to the Green Line extension opening and the ability to transfer at East Somerville Station, as you actually already can transfer in the inbound direction, and this will allow for a transfer in the outbound direction as well. I'm not going to speak to all of these, but I definitely would like to highlight the Route 450. That's probably the most significant of the routing changes. This is actually a Sumner Tunnel related change. Because of the Sumner closure over the summer months, the Route 450 will temporarily, instead of traveling all the way into downtown Boston, it will temporarily be terminating at the Blue Line at Wood Island Station. So that's probably the most significant of these routing changes. That is temporary because of the Sumner closure, and it will be back with the start of our summer schedules in late August. The next sort of category of bus changes we have are departure time changes. This affects 27 routes. These are generally pretty minor updates. We're always monitoring runtimes throughout our network, and each quarter we're trying to chip away and make sure that those runtimes are as representative of the actual travel times. Since in the last 2 years, in general, congestion has been getting a bit worse. Travel times had decreased somewhat in 2020, kind of early in the days of COVID. And now that travel has resumed, we often see that travel times are increasing. So these are more of a truth in advertising of how long it takes to get from point A to point B to point C. So there should be fairly minor travel time impacts, but it might mean that frequencies, specific trip times, specific arrival times might change for these 27 routes listed. There are actually a handful, 4 routes that have increased service frequency. In one case, the SL1, this is because there's an added bus for Sumner Tunnel mitigation on weekday mornings. That added bus is partly going into increased travel time because we expect that the Ted Williams Tunnel will see more congestion with diverted Sumner traffic, and it will have a very small frequency improvement on weekdays as well. And then the 39, 101, and 104 will see a little bit more midday service. This is because one of the initiatives we've been trying to do to make work more appealing for our employees is to promote folks from part-time to full-time. We are doing a round of promotions over the summer, and a larger round is slated coming later this fall. As part of that, it means that we're able to increase service a little bit in the middle of the day, sort of in the 9 to 10 or 9 to 11 o'clock timeframe, so that we can convert some of our full-time positions into some of our part-time positions into full-time. So there's a handful of places where we were able to add some service, but kind of the primary changes that we're making for the summer that we've spoken at length about already are these decreased service frequencies, which we will see on 62 different routes. These are primarily on weekdays, especially during rush hours. And these are designed to better reflect the real world travel conditions and the actual operators that we have available. For illustration, in the table on the right side of the screen, you can see that there are some examples. For example, I mentioned today the Route 1 is scheduled to be every 8 to 12 minutes. It could be that sometimes if a trip is dropped from the Route 1, it's one of the routes that does have a higher dropped trip rate than some of our other routes. That can leave gaps of every 16 to 25 minutes. But with the schedule changes, we're saying we will plan for the Route 1 to be every 10 to 15 minutes all day. And that in doing so, we can minimize the number of those very long gaps, the every 20 to 25 minute gaps that would not be planned. So you can see similar cases for some of our other higher frequency routes. There might be cases where there's a medium frequency route. For example, the Route 80 is currently scheduled for every 30 minutes in rush hours. We've seen that there's been a great deal of diversion of riders from the Route 80 bus onto the Green Line extension. So we are proposing that for the amount of ridership that's available, we think that every 45-minute service would be able to accommodate the ridership that we experience during rush hours. And that's kind of at the upper end of the type of schedule adjustment that you can see. So for the more frequent routes, it's a smaller change in frequency. For some of those less frequent routes, you can see that the impact of changing one bus would have a bigger, in this case, it's a 15-minute change in the headway, the frequency between buses, between adjacent trips that we can provide. So again, this isn't an exhaustive list of all the changes. You can see all the changes at our website at mbta.com, and the link is provided here, mbta.com/service-changes/summer-2023-service-changes. Next slide. I'd also like to highlight some of the summer changes that are related to the Sumner tunnel closure. So I already highlighted that when the Sumner tunnel is closed 7 days a week from July 5th through August 31st, we're going to be having the Route 450 diverted to Wood Island Station instead of continuing to downtown. Also, SL1 and SL3, which are two services that are using the Ted Williams Tunnel, we are expecting them to have runtime changes, including the slightly better frequencies for the SL1 on weekdays. Related to that, we're very excited. We've been partnering with Massport to test out a route change on weekends for the SL3 to take a different path using the Rental Car Center busway. And that has been a very productive test that we're looking forward to keeping in place. Pretty much, we started it as a test not last weekend, but 2 weekends ago. And we're planning to keep that change in place through the Sumner closure because of the change and the benefit to travel times that we've seen for the SL3. Also, it was just announced last week that the Blue Line will be free and will be more frequent over the summer. So the Blue Line would be free, and we are adding peak trains, so it will operate every 6 to 8 minutes during the morning and evening rush hours. As well, we're increasing midday service so that middle of the day travel should be more frequent and help us to carry the increased ridership that we expect to be attracted by the free service. Ferry service, there will be free rides between Lewis Wharf in East Boston and Long Wharf in Boston as well. So for any information about these diversions, please visit mbta.com/Sumner. We have some other service changes for commuter rail. They're on a slightly different calendar. So for the commuter rail network, their summer schedules begin May 22nd. They're actually already in effect. You can see them online. For the ferry services, beginning May 27, weekend service started up for the seasonal Hingham Hall ferry service, which includes the seasonal stop at George's Island on weekdays. And coming up June 26th, there will be new ferry service restarting between Lynn and Boston, which is a mitigation option for the upcoming Sumner closure. It has 10 trips per day, and you can see the ferry schedules online at mbta.com/schedules/ferry. From here, I'll turn it back over to Ashley.
Thank you, Melissa. So for MBTA notifications and public feedback, up-to-date information will be available on the MBTA's website, and bus schedule information will be updated to reflect those changes. To plan your trip, you can visit the MBTA Trip Planner. That's mbta.com/trip planner. The MBTA Trip Planner can often provide multiple routes to your destination, reducing transfers or walking times so you can choose the option that's best for you. We also have MBTA customer support. That's 617-222-3200. By TTY, that's 617-222-5146. Toll free, that's 1-800-392-6100. A representative will be happy to help you plan your trip right over the phone. We're also collecting feedback from the public on our summer service changes and service allocation process. That can be done in different methods, whether it's through email at publicengagement@mbta.com, by phone at 857-327-3282, with our main line being the same phone number at 857-327-3282, or again by TTY at 617-222-5146. Our mailing address is at 10 Park Plaza, Suite 3830, and that's in Boston, Massachusetts, 02116. I'd like to thank Melissa and Gil for co-hosting the presentation today. And I'd now like to transition over to the Q&A portion of our section, where Billy Parent, a community engagement lead, will lead our Q&A session. As we move into it, we're aware that folks have already raised their hands, so we're excited to get to your questions and comments. As we move into it, if you'd like to share a comment or ask a question for us and members of the service planning team, please use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen to submit your typed question to Ask Questions Here. Please note that we'll alternate between reading the questions in the chat that are already submitted through Ask Questions Here, and also recognizing those who want to pose a question verbally. For those who are joining by phone, you can raise your hand by pressing star and then 9, and all attendees who will speak any other languages, you can do the same function by raising your hand and clicking on star 9, and we'll be able to translate verbally and repeat your comments. Thank you. Billy, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Ashley. Good evening, everyone. So as Ashley mentioned, we'll alternate between written and verbal comments. So since the first comment that was received was written, I will read that out loud to the group and then provide it to our panel here. So the first written comment was from David T. And that question was, what is the timeline for returning the subway line frequency to the current level after the summer? So Melissa and Ashley, I will let you all kind of decide who's best to answer that question.
Hi, I'll jump in. There's a number of different things that are going on the subway lines. Probably the most pronounced if you're a rider on the Red Line, especially down toward Braintree, but also on the Ashmont branch, is that there are a number of speed restrictions that are in place because of track condition. So these, I don't have a firm timeline of when these will be returned to regular speeds. It sort of depends on being able to do some of these weekend shutdowns to allow us to do all the different work that's needed to eliminate the slow zones and get back to regular speeds there. In the case of the Orange Line, that's sort of a different scenario. There are some speed restrictions because of the tracks, but really the Orange Line's been dominated by vehicle availability. So as we have access to more vehicles get delivered. And actually, for the summer, we expect to be increasing the number of daily scheduled trains from 10, which is where we're at with the existing spring schedules, up to 11 in the summer schedules. We expect to see improved frequency as a result of that, and possibly up to maybe 12 trains sometime in the fall, depending on vehicle availability. We're still waiting to hear that, so that's not confirmed. In the case of the Blue Line, they're good with vehicle availability, but they do have some, not quite as pronounced as the Red Line, but some speed restrictions on the order of about 10 minutes per round trip, which has had a small impact. But actually, Blue Line is probably the closest to its earlier schedules. And I know there is some work planned there. So it sort of depends on which line you're looking at, when we expect to start seeing improvements of frequency because of the either speed restrictions, slow zones, and vehicle availability.
Thank you, Melissa. So next we will have a question from a hand raised with the group. And so Ashley and Terry, I believe you were going to help with the muting and unmuting here. So I saw James Williamson's hand and Andrew Johnson's hand, followed by David Key's hand.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So appreciate, I did put some stuff in the chat. I just, I live in Cambridge, and the 83 is important to me, and it serves, sort of the heaviest concentration of low-income people in all of Cambridge by far. And you're cutting it from, during peak hours from 20, whatever it is, to every 30 minutes. The number one, I was riding the number one once with Fred Salvucci, the grand old man of transportation planning and politics in Massachusetts, and I asked Fred, as we rode on the number one, Fred, what's the solution to the bunching problem on the number one in particular? And he looked at me and he goes, more buses. And it sounds like what you're saying is less buses, less scheduled buses is actually going to improve service. I just can't believe they're saying that with a straight face. If that's the case, why don't you just reduce service across the entire system and then and say it's going to improve service? I just don't understand how you can make that claim. Please explain. And as far as drivers, obviously that's a huge problem. I would just want to say the number one thing for the MBTA, you guys got to stop. Did I get unmuted or muted? Am I still allowed to speak?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay, okay. All right, sorry. Anyway, so the two things I want to say is, like, first of all, the main thing the MBTA really need to do is to stop dressing up everything you do as good news. Let's face it, everybody knows that the MBTA is in some kind of terrible, free fall. Start by accepting that that's where you're at and saying, okay, we're going to try to do the best, make do with where we're at. And, that's number one. With the drivers, I didn't hear anything about employee morale. How about when you tried to raise the retirement age to 65, and according to drivers I spoke with, they had to go to arbitration to block that? What are you doing? I mean, we're not idiots. How about 15 years in the driver's seat and you get some kind of opportunity to retire and do something else with the rest of your life? You're going in the wrong direction. Yes, I see you're doing some things, that you did itemize, but how about having drivers be involved, really actively involved in planning the routes? They complain all the time they don't have enough time, or the window between the two pieces of work doesn't give them a chance to do anything. There's so much that you could do to bring the operators into this so that they feel better about what they do. I talk to them all the time. They're really not happy. So make it an attractive job. Let them retire after 15 years. And then the last thing I just want to say, look, there are other things that you could be doing to address some of the service issues, like the countdown clocks. The dispatching situation from Alewife is just a total mess. It's like constantly being adjusted. There's misleading information. And finally, the apps, if you wait for the 77 buses, I do every night in Harvard, you don't get accurate information about where the bus is and when the next one that you see it. I have to look at the incoming buses from Arlington to try to guess whether there is in fact a bus, and when it's leaving, and is it really going to be there, and is it really going to leave on time, even though it appears to be there. There's something wrong with your bus app that would help just to know, okay, the bus isn't coming. And then you can, like what I often have to do is I have to run from the platform because I realize the bus that I thought was coming isn't, and run down and get on the next red line if it looks like there's a red line coming to head up to Porter Square on my journey home. So, I don't know. I think I've said most of it, but are really unhappy about the cuts on the 1, the 83, and the 77. I mean, how can you cut the 77 anymore? Thank you.
Thank you for that. And so, Melissa, it looks like you're ready to answer the first part of that comment and question.
Yeah, certainly. I know it's a confusing thing, but I actually am very certain that especially for the Route 1 riders and the 77 riders or the 32 riders or any of our high frequency routes, 32 and 111, those are the routes that right now have just very long gaps in service. Kind of at an individual route level, it sort of makes sense that, if an operator is out and not available to operate a trip, operations is trying to do the best they can with the operators that they have available. So they'll steal a trip from the more frequent services. So instead of having a gap of every 8 to 10 minutes on one route, they'll say, okay, well, if we're missing a trip here, it'll be maybe every 16 to 20 minutes. It's not that they plan to cut it, it's just that they didn't have an operator. So it would be more preferable to do that at an individual trip level on a more frequent route than if you were to cut it on, say, a route that comes once an hour. And then if you cut that route from the schedule because you don't have the operator, then it might be every 2 hours. That's a much bigger impact to a lot of people. But when you multiply that many dozens and dozens of times over the course of an individual day, that can mean that routes like the 1 and the 77 and the 111 and the 32 are really seeing very high drop trip rates. Some of those routes, it's in excess of 10% of service doesn't operate. So when we're thinking of making a 4 to 5% service cut, that's how we got to the number that the key bus routes, those most frequent routes, should actually see more service. But yes, it does mean that we're kind of pushing some of that pain across to other routes so that everything is sort of contributing a little bit and trying to shoulder some of that burden of the existing operator shortage. So that's why it's not intuitive to say that service quality might improve on some routes with this change, but because it's trying to actually show up on the day of service and not leave those long, unpredictable, unexpected gaps. And especially, that experience of trying to figure out, can you make it to the upstairs busway, and is the bus even going to show up for the 77? I've made that transfer many times myself, and I know the predictions can be a challenge at the first stop in particular, because the predictions are often based on the schedule and don't know that the next operator isn't available and that next trip isn't going to run until maybe a short time afterwards. So hopefully this set of schedule changes should improve that experience if there are fewer trips getting cut from the schedule. I can't say we're going to eliminate all of them, but if we can make it so that it's an uncommon thing, not like it has been, especially on the 77, a very common thing. And there's a lot of other questions there, so I'll see if Ashley wants to try any of the other questions.
Thanks, Melissa. So the other question or point was about morale, retirement age, kind of operator engagement. So maybe that's a question for Gil, just about some of the hiring and retention initiatives that are ongoing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say right now it's a good call out by the caller. Right now, a lot of our focus has been on the front end of the process, which is increasing our throughput and making the job attractive and able to, in order to bring on new operators onto the MBTA. As our HR group, also transitions from a more of a people manager, looking at starting to shift our attention now towards the retention efforts, and rightfully so. Planning on how do we get in front of the actual people that do the work every day and could tell us how do we improve the job as a whole. So more to come there, but right now a lot of our focus has been on the front end of the process, and we'll continue to shift over to the retention efforts in order to make sure that we're not only attracting but retaining the talent in order to deliver the service that we're required to deliver.
Thank you, Gil. Okay, I think we'll move to the next question, which is a written question. So we're going to move back to one of the written comments received. So this question is from Lindsay Petro. I apologize if I didn't pronounce that correctly. And her question is, what recourse do we as the public and does the MBTA have against the developers of the Government Center Garage development project? Their development project has had and continues to have significant impacts on public infrastructure. And it seems like officials are willing to bend to the will of these developers at the expense of the public. So that's the verbatim comment that was received. So Melissa, I will let you decide who is best to answer that.
I don't know that we have anybody who's in a position to answer that. I know there's certain changes because of the Government Center Garage process, which is over our Green Line station and Orange Line station and over the where the Haymarket Busway is. There are some agreements in place to allow them access so that they can construct the building, which also requires that we have a number of weekend diversions planned. So sometimes we'll have to either have a replacement shuttle bus operate, or depending if the Orange Line is able to run through, sometimes we use the Orange Line as a shuttle bus. And that's part of the agreement with the developers to build that. And we have been in touch, but I'm not familiar with some of the other aspects of that question.
But thank you for that question, Lindsay. What we can do is if you send your email over to Ask Questions Here, I'll be able to get a response for you and email you back with any response to that, as well as additional questions you may have, responses to those too.
Thank you, Ashley and Melissa. So next, we will answer a question from the group here, and I see Andrew Johnson's hand up. I see a question also from Andrew Johnson in the written comments section. So I think now would be a great time to give Andrew Johnson the floor.
So before I ask my verbal question, would it be okay if we answer my written question instead first?
Sure, I can read that. And so, or would you like to ask, or I'd happily read it. I'll go ahead and read it. Okay, so Andrew Johnson's question is, isn't frequency on the Blue Line currently every 4 to 6 minutes? 6 to 8 minutes sounds like a decrease. Along with my question in the chat, I'd also like to know why and how this is an improvement. And can I know why this is better than the current schedule, which seems to be 4 to 6 minutes? So I can repeat the top part. Isn't the frequency on the Blue Line currently every 4 to 6 minutes? 6 to 8 minutes sounds like a decrease. I'll pass it over to you, Melissa.
Okay, I think also maybe the information in the slide wasn't entirely correct. But there's also a mismatch. So today they may be scheduled to be every 4 to 6 minutes, but because of those speed restrictions, we're not actually delivering that scheduled 4 to 6 minute headway because it takes about 10-ish extra minutes per round trip, which means that the actual service that we're able to provide might be closer to like 5 to 7-ish minutes. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. So with the summer, there's two things that are happening. We're actually adding a 12th train set. So there will be more trains running at the same time that we were revising the travel times to be more representative of the actual travel times that it takes to get from one end to the other. Now, at the same time, we also had a contingency schedule that if with the different work that's forecast, they're able to eliminate those speed restrictions and get back to the regular speed. We have a schedule at the ready, so we can get back to the historic cycle times with the 12 trains, and also something closer to maybe 60-ish minutes, so that we could get closer to that every 5-minute service. So there will be actual more trains. The actual headway that we get from that varies depending on how many of the speed restrictions are able to be cleared, which those speed restrictions are not baked into the spring schedules. So that's the disconnect.
Thank you, Melissa. So the next hand that I see is from David T. And so I think we can give David T the floor, the microphone, to ask a question. David T had the first question about when is the timeline returning for subway service? So just for context, and the floor is yours, David.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to follow up on that because I'm looking at, and maybe kind of echo Andrew's point as well about discrepancies in the numbers. I'm looking at the published schedule that is set to say, effective July 2nd. And this schedule suggests that the blue line will be running every 5 to 6 minutes, not 6 to 8. I wonder if you could tell me whether or not that's correct.
Sounds closer to correct,
Okay.
to be honest. So I think the 6 to 8 was a typo on the slide.
Okay.
That's also the number that my team's getting. So
And-
apologies for the
Okay. And the orange line on the published schedule online suggests that trains will be running every 10 to 12 minutes throughout the day, no change between peak and off peak. That is down from every 7 to 10 minutes on peak and every 8 to 12 minutes off peak, both of which are higher than the suggested change. So you said that there will be 11 trains running instead of 10. Yet those numbers are both less frequent, I suspect. And you said that there wasn't the same issue with the slow zones on the orange line. So I wonder if you could explain that, why it's going down and not up.
Certainly. So, and actually, let me make a note to the team that we should check that the schedule information is correct for the orange line. But because of the vehicle availability, I mentioned that we had 2 different versions of the schedule that we had built for the blue line. One is kind of the 12 trains, which is an increase with the kind of historic travel times. And then one is with the slow zone travel times. In the case of the orange line, we also built 2 versions of the schedule. One is with 10 trains and the a little bit slow zone run times. And the other is with 11 trains and a little bit slow zone travel time. So the thing that's different between the 2 scenarios is that we are increasing a train set. I'm not sure that schedule card is reflecting the transition to the 11 train schedule, because the times sound more like the 10 train, but let me check with the team and we can confirm what the correct headway frequency is for the orange line for the summer.
Okay, and I had one really, sorry, I don't mean to dominate the time, but just a quick thing, because one of the people who wrote in was talking about the government center shutdowns. And yes, there have been weekend diversions, quite a few weekend diversions, as a matter of fact, but there's also currently a 2-week full shutdown between government center and North Station on the Green Line, 2 weeks solid. Like, again, I know that this maybe isn't the right venue to, I mean, I know you guys don't control what's going on with the government center garage, but I'm hoping you guys know someone who maybe knows a bit more about it or can talk to people who have actual pull in this, because like the other writer said, it's incredibly disruptive. Like, talking about the difficulty of getting to the airport, I can't get to the blue line to go to the airport because I rely on the green line to get to the blue line. So, and the website for the MBTA, there are no shuttle buses available. It says just walk. So take your luggage, go above ground, walk in the rain half a mile through downtown, then get on the blue line. I mean, this is absurd, right? Especially considering the other options to get to the airport are getting worse with the Sumner Tunnel closure. Like, there just has to be a better way to do this. It really is not fair to us to have this constantly and unexpectedly shut down. It's totally ridiculous. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, That's fair. We don't have folks who are closer to that project, so I don't think we have a better answer for that, but we absolutely understand that this can be extremely disruptive, and we'll relay those concerns along.
Thank you, David. So next we have a question from Andrew Johnson. So Andrew, I can either give you the mic or I can read the question as written in the chat. So I'll give you that option there.
Okay, sweet. So I had just a couple of questions. One, my question is, if we're increasing the orange line from 10 trains to 11 trains, I know the 14s have been a problem for a while. Is it possible to, like, how many of the 12s or the 13s do we still have in the either the Wellington Yard or down in Forest Hills? If possible, do you think it's safe enough to bring back the 12s to the 13s, if that means, you know, additional service? Because, you know, 10 trains, you know, 10 to 14 minutes headways is just like, you know, we just simply cannot have headways that large, you know, especially during peak hours where I essentially have to like look at a schedule to look at what time I can take the orange line. If I miss one train, that's enough time for me to go back up and get a cup of coffee before taking the next train, essentially, you know, which that's kind of concerning, especially considering, you know, like the tunnel will be shut down, people are still going to work, and, you know, people are on the holidays and stuff. So that's my first question. And my second question is, you know, considering that the commuter rail between Boston and Beverly are every 30 minutes, roughly, with the shutdown, you know, and my concern about that is that trains are going to be much more crowded. Has there been any considerations to maybe increasing service between Boston and Beverly? Those are my questions.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
that.
Andrew.
I've actually asked the first question that you had brought. Certainly, we would be theoretically able to offer better frequency if we had more cars available to go into service on the Orange Line. I'm not a vehicle maintenance expert, but all the vehicle maintenance experts that I've asked have said that it's extremely unlikely that the old cars would be put back into service. So we've been building the best schedules that we can with the new cars, and those continue to be delivered. That's why we're starting to do some scenario planning for the a 12 train schedule, perhaps sometime in the fall. And we look forward to those improved frequencies. We can take down your comments and ask those of our commuter rail team. I don't know if you have any other insight there, Ashley?
Yes, I just also wrote in the chat. So please send your emails and information over to ask questions here, and we'll relay it to the relevant team, whatever question that you may have. And we'll be sure to get back to you as well via email or by phone if you prefer that as well.
Great. Thank you, Ashley. And with that, I believe that is all the questions that we've received so far in the chat, and I do not see any hands up at the moment, but I'll certainly give it a few more minutes if there is a question that comes up, or if anyone had perhaps forgotten to raise their hand. So we'll certainly stay on and be available for a few minutes longer if there are any questions. So thank you again for attending and for all your questions tonight, and we will stay on for a little bit, as I just mentioned.
Andrew, it looks like, okay, okay. So we have L. Jackson and Andrew Johnson. Andrew, since you've asked a question already, we're going to go to L. Jackson, and then we'll go to you next, Andrew. L, can you unmute?
Yes, thank you so much. So forgive me if I'm asking a question that's really outside the purview or intent of this meeting, but as I listened to a couple other attendees, it made me think and that it was okay. But so periodically, very infrequently, but I will ride a commuter rail from the Hyde Park neighborhood of Boston into South Station. And so whether I'm using the purple Fairmont line or the, what is that? A line that goes to Forest Hills, commuter rail, that is. Well, early May, the first full week of May, I was commuting into the office, and I used the commuter rail line and caught it at well, attempted to catch it at the Forest Hill station to go into South Station. I was there very early before the train that I wanted to catch. The train notification system there at the station said the train was arriving, you know, give you the periodic updates when it's arriving. The time that it was supposed to arrive came and went without the train, on top of an additional, I think 25 minutes passed by before the commuter rail train actually arrived. Now, bear in mind, again, there were notifications the train is 9 minutes away. The train will be here in 7 minutes. And then next thing you know, the train never arrived. And I'm standing on the platform along with many others 25 minutes after the time it should have been there. Can I just get an understanding of why something like that would happen? I know you don't know the specifics on that, right? Because I'm just asking in this meeting here, but why would something like this happen? Why would the communication continue to say that it's coming and it never came? I just don't understand. And I'm sure everybody there was late for work that morning, you know? Could you shed some light on something like that? And what should a passenger do in those instances? I mean, I wound up having to hop over to the regular train, right? The regular, I don't know, a train to get to work. But I just wanted some, you know, insight, if there is any, as to why something like that could possibly happen. And then the communication would be so wrong. Why is that? Thank you.
Ashley, do you have any ideas on this one? So clearly that's not how it's supposed to go. That's a bit outside of the expertise of the folks who are here in this meeting. So I don't have a good answer, but as Ashley was mentioning, you can leave your contact information by putting that into the ask questions here part of the chat if you're interested in a follow-up.
Thank you, Melissa. Al, I was actually writing a response back to you now in chat. So hopefully you can get it, and we look forward to chatting with you.
Great, thank you. So we now have an additional written comment that has come in the chat. So this is a question from, and I apologize if I say this name incorrectly, Yangxi Feng. And the question is, what is the timeline for restoring frequencies? It appears that the MBTA has already committed to restoring some routes for the fall, as indicated on the website. Will the remaining routes be restored for the winter schedule?
Could I ask a clarifying question? Is that a subway or a bus question?
So it did not specify as to subway or bus.
Sorry, the
ahead.
commenter just clarified that it's referring to the bus.
Ah, okay.
Oh, great.
Thanks. That's a great question. So that's sort of a different narrative because we're looking at trying to have enough service to meet the demand that we see. At the same time, we're looking toward a time when we're able to boost our hiring to plus 25%. We're also looking at implementation of our bus network redesign changes. So the exact restoration of bus service sort of depends. As we get more operators, the goal is to perhaps look at places that have the crowding issues or severe reliability. You know, if the runtimes have increased very dramatically, those would probably be the first places to see service restoration. But it might be that some of the bus network redesign priorities that were identified through the bus network redesign process might be some of those things get get restored. And then over the next 5 years, we do a blended approach of implementing bus network redesign and also getting frequencies back, or some frequencies. It might be that the final bus network redesign state doesn't have the same frequencies that they had before these changes. So it depends, but certainly crowding and providing kind of more mobility for our riders is something that we're very interested in doing.
Thank you, Melissa. And I see hands raised from Andrew Johnson and James Williamson. I imagine those are follow-ups. I'm not sure who is next. I believe James Williamson would be next in the queue of questions. So.
Okay, can you hear me?
James. Yes.
Okay, I appreciate the opportunity to, get back in on something that I was trying to type, but it was hard. I do think these meetings should be set up, the Zoom setting should be as open and inclusive as possible so that everybody participating can see who else is, unless they don't want to say, which should be an option for the individuals. But this is picking up on something that was said in answer to an earlier comment of mine about, morale and the shortage of drivers. I mean, for one thing, it was the MBTA, if I'm not mistaken, that that put a hiring freeze in place at the beginning of COVID. I mean, you guys, not you individually necessarily, but the MBTA have to take responsibility for this situation. I'm really not hearing that as much as I think we deserve to. Like, where did the shortage come from? Well, if you put a hiring freeze in place, that's gonna have an impact at some point, obviously, if I'm not mistaken about that. But why is it? I've heard this because I talk to drivers all the time and inspectors and hello.
Yeah, I might
and
have to.
A hot mic.
Oh, well, yeah, maybe. So are you hearing me? Am
I hear you.
still audible? Okay. So
Yep.
I've heard about this situation where drivers, who are employed are not available. They don't show up. They're taking a sick day. They're, calling in sick. I've been hearing about this from the people who are actually doing this work and intimately involved. And I don't know that I'm hearing enough understanding of what's going on there and how, yes, it's not just random. What I'm hearing from people is that this is happening more and more because of the low morale. And, obviously there are different, there are inspector jobs and there are dispatcher jobs and there are driver operator jobs. But, why is it, I just wish, I'd like to hear an acknowledgement of that. This is not just, people calling in sick like they always did. There's a reason why, in my understanding, I don't have the data in front of me, why this may be a bigger problem in, since the beginning of COVID than it was before. What is it that's going on that people are doing this just because they're disgusted with how things are being managed? And so I just, I don't know what else to add, or if you have any, I'm not suggesting you would have anything to say about that right now, but, get in there and sit down with not just union, politics, but sit down with the drivers, the operators, the inspectors, and really dig deep into what are some of the issues for them and how you could improve morale so that they feel valued and they're able to do their jobs. By the way, on Saturday nights, there's a guy who always closes the Brattle Street elevator and entrance at like midnight. How about little things like that? Anyway, so I appreciate your allowing us to contribute. Thanks.
Thanks, James. I think there are a number of issues going on. Some of them might be generational. A lot of our drivers are older, and as they reach retirement age, we haven't been as successful at attracting younger, folks might not see that. I don't know if Gil, if you want to speak to that, but on the morale issue, I've been at 2 different bus operator forums in the last month or so, and on the issue of the breaks. One of the kind of realities of operating a transit service is that we have more demand for service from like 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the morning. And then we have another spike in demand for service in like 3 to 7 o'clock in the afternoon. Because of that peak in demand, some of our shifts, not all of them, but some of our shifts have what we call split days, where you come in and you work in the morning, and then you might have 3 or 4 or 5 hours break unpaid in the middle of the day, and you complete your shift in the evening. That's obviously not something that's desirable for employees because it can be disruptive to their days. It means that folks have more time away from family or from school or all the other things that they might be working on. That's something that we're very attuned to. On my team, we've been working very, very hard at trying to minimize that, we call that spread, when you have a long day with those breaks in the middle. Actually got some stats that we were able to kind of chip away at some of those breaks so that the average employee, I call it excess break time. So like beyond just like 30 minutes for lunch, we decreased that by about 18% with some of the other run cut type changes that we were able to implement on the service planning team. So we hear that from our operators. Obviously, there's more we could do. We have some ideas on how we could get rid of all of those things, but it takes some, there's some things that we would need to negotiate with the union in order to fully realize some of those changes with creating like a new classification and some other things. So we're not quite in a position to commit to doing that yet, but we're absolutely committed to pulling on that thread and seeing what we can do, because the break time is one of the biggest pain points we've heard from operators. And then there's a number of other things with pay rates. Inflation has been very, very high. The cost of living in Boston is very, very high. So many times we hear from operators that it's just difficult to make ends, and those are things that we have to negotiate. So we're not in a position to talk about those right now, but we absolutely understand are part of the complete calculus of what goes into someone making the decision to be a bus operator.
Thank you, Melissa. And Gil, I saw that you had joined. Did you have anything to add, or do you think Melissa covered it?
Yeah, Melissa covered it well. I would add on in terms of, the morale and the culture. What we're really trying to put forward is to listen to our operators and listen to our team members. Everything from launching employee surveys and getting direct feedback. Our employee resource groups, being from an HR perspective, being proactive with our employee resource groups that are heavily represented by our frontline operators, our IDEAL program, which looks at the learning and development and training of our frontline operators and hearing from them of what they're seeing of how we improve culture overall, and our DEI council. So long story short, putting a lot of different program and efforts out there to make sure that we're hearing directly from our frontline operators and all our team members on, we recognize that there's change to be made. And so how do we all contribute to those ideas and listen to the folks that are, doing the hard work that we require them to do every day?
Great, thank you. So we have Andrew Johnson with a hand raised. So I will hand the mic off to Andrew Johnson.
All right, so yes, earlier we talked about how we wanted to try to, it seems like the MBTA wants to try on the orange line, try to keep the 14s as much as possible, and that the likelihood of bringing the 12s and 13s back is extremely unlikely. There is a YouTuber who actually is like a rail fanner. He talks about this, and a few months ago he was talking about how there were only 5 trains running on the orange line on the entire system, which is extremely frustrating. I want to know, shouldn't the MBTA prioritize good service over good looking trains? And I think my concern about that is that I think that the MBTA wants to look good, right? And yes, obviously, yes, it's good. It's important to look good, but I think what's more important is to actually do well and do better than to just have good looking trains. And with that, I think that, you know, again, it seems like people are frustrated with like just a lack of frequent services. So I still am just like, I just want to know why exactly those 12s and 13s just cannot come back, or like why have we not been able to bring back or bring up more 14s? And if, you know, we are going to increase services on the Orange Line, why can we only have 11 cars as opposed to the 15 or 16 trains that ideally could be running on the Orange Line?
Thank you for that comment, Andrew. We've taken that into account and we'll make sure to forward that over to the folks that will be able to best assist. I have your email here on the account as well, and I'll be sure to give you a follow-up where and if needed. Okay, great. Does anyone have any more comments or questions? We'll give it up until 7:46 and then we can end the meeting.
I see we have one more question from Andrew Johnson, who is chatting. But I see he has his hand raised now.
Hello? Can people hear me? Okay. One more question, I guess. This is a very big change. I'm asking about buses now. 450, 426, and 428 are express buses, which means that passengers have to pay the express fare. During the shutdown, has there been any consideration to lowering down to the local bus fare, despite it being an express service?
So in the case of the 450, because the service is terminating at the Blue Line and doesn't continue into downtown Boston, the regular fare for the 450 just for the summer will actually be a regular bus fare. So it will not be the express fare. In the case of the other routes that would continue to serve downtown Boston because they're able to use the Tobin or other ways to get into Boston, I had not heard of that particular incentive, but we can relay that to the fare team.
Andrew, I've also sent you more information in the chat as well. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Going once, going twice. Third time. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Gil. Thank you, Billy. We really appreciate it. And thank you all of you for participating and attending, asking questions, giving us feedback and comments. We greatly appreciate it. We hope you have a great rest of your evening and feel free to email us at publicengagement@mbta.com for any additional questions that you may have. Thank you. Bye, everyone.